There are no longer many lights that shine in the life of Agnes Kavere. Those that do have kept her alive, deeply in pain but still able to take care of her 3 children. For the 30-year-old, life must go on despite the challenges and tragedies she has seen. Kavere now lives with a friend in Mashimoni in Nairobi's Kibera slums, but before she lived in Huruma and was in this building when it collapsed and killed 52 of her neighbors. On the 29th of April 2016, when the 6-story building collapsed, Kavere had been in the city for only a week. She had come with her 2-year-old lastborn from her rural home to visit her husband for the holidays. 6 days in, there were heavy rains in the area, and the signs that things were not going well were all too evident.
Saa watu wa the other side wa huko walikuwa wanasema nini? Building itawaangukia. Sasa hatukuwa serious tukijua kama kweli wanamaanisha ni yetu. Na kutoka hapo sasa usiku kioo ika crack, ikapasuka.
Kioo ya nyumba yako?
Yeah. Sasa mzangu akasema wacha tuvumilie tu juu saa hii ni usiku, alafu kesho tutahama. Sasa kesho yani ilikuwa Friday. Sasa tukakaa tu, lakini sasa huwezi lala juu itakupata wapi. Sasa ile tu unalalia macho moja. Sasa ilipofika kesho yake akaonekana hakuwa na pesa, akapigia bosi wake akamwambia nilikuwa nataka unipatie pesa yangu jumali naishi kuko risk. Sasa bosi akawa amemwambia atamtumia. Sasa alikuwa ameenda akatafuta mahali nyumba iko, wakawa wamemwambia 8K. Sasa Nila alikuwa anangojea tu atumie pesa ndio sasa tuende hapo. Sasa ile hali kukaa tu tunangoja message yani bosi atume, hakutuma.
That evening when she was making supper, the building started shaking.
Sasa kidogo nataka maji imechemuka, nimeweka unga, nikasikia kama mtetemeko wa nyumba. Nikampigia simu, nikamwambia ikuja huku chini haraka. Sasa alipokuja nikamwambia sikia hii nyumba venye nafanya nini inatetemeka. Na yeye akaniambia hapana. Sasa wachana na hiyo kazi unafanya, chukua mtoto tuanze kubeba vitu tukipeleka wapi? Upstairs huko kuko safe. Sasa mimi nikamwambia how comes nini upstairs kuko safe na hii ni building moja ya chini naweza katika aje na juu baki imehang. Akaniambia hapana, nimekuambia tubebe vitu tukipeleka upstairs. Sasa sichukua ground. Sasa ile hali sikutaka mabishano sana. Mimi nikachukua mtoto nikaweka kwa mgongo. Sasa tukaanza kubeba vitu tukipeleka 3rd floor.
While they were busy ferrying things to the 3rd floor, most of the people were actually moving out and were surprised that she was not seeing the urgency and the danger.
Sasa neighbor akaniambia, Mama Leon, wewe unapelekaje vitu juu unaona nyumba inaanguka? Nikamwambia hapana, sasa unajua niko na mzee na amesema juu kukose, sasa siwezi muacha. Akaniambia wewe muache, sisi tuende. Nikamwambia siwezi muacha, heri yenye tupate wote. Sasa hao wakawa wanachukua tu yenye wanaona hao wanaenda, na mimi na mzee tunabeba tu vitu tukipeleka juu. Sasa ikaonekana hiyo hapo ground mpaka choo yote ikapasuka kila mahali.
Soon, Kavere, with the baby strapped on her back, had gotten tired of the numerous trips from the ground floor to the 3rd floor and wanted to hand the 2-year-old boy to his father. But her husband refused and told her to remain in the house while he did the trips alone. There was only 1 round remaining anyway.
La rudi kuchukua za pili, akaniambia usitoke hapo. Juu napeleka hizi alafu sasa tuende nitumalizie hizi alafu tuende tujipange sasa juu. Nikamwambia saa. Akawa amepeleka mguu moja kwa stairs, akaniambia usitoke hapo. Nikamwambia saa. Na mimi mtoto alikuwa kwa mgongo. Sasa kitu inaniambia nimfungue, ingine inaniambia hapana. Kitu inaniambia nimfungue, ingine inaniambia hapana. Sasa ile hali tu ya kukaa hapo, nafikiria nitoe mtoto, nafikiria tena hapana. Kidogo nikasikia sasa mtetemeko wa building mzima. Sasa ile hali tu kupiga hivi step moja ati nakimbia, nikanifunikia hapo na mtoto. Sasa bahati yangu sikuwa nimetoa mtoto kwa mgongo, lakini ningekuwa nimemfungua kwa hapa angekufia kwa mikono yangu. Juu mchanga yote ingemfunika. Sasa venye tu ilinifunikia hapo, Sasa kuanzia huku mpaka chini huku unaniona hizo chuma ya tokens zote kwangu, alafu na hiyo mama yote. Sasa huku ndo nilikuwa tu safe, na mikono huku stima naye inafanya nini, inanichapa, na mtoto pia na alikuwa analia stima.
After the building had collapsed, Kavere could not move. She tried to cry out for help, but for hours no one could come to her aid. Soon, however, local residents came in for a search and rescue and found Kavere, but they could only rescue her child.
Sasa venye hao walikuja ikaonekana, wakaniambia unaweza mfungua, nikaambia mikono inaweza fungua. Nikafungua nikapeana tu kwa mwente, sijui. Nikasema juu mimi nilikuwa naona ni kifo nimeshaona, nikasema heri niokoe mtoto mwenye atakaa na yeye akae na yeye. Mimi sasa niliona kama sitapona.
As she lay there waiting for rescue, she tried calling her husband, but they could not understand each other in the few seconds they spoke before her airtime ran out. She was rescued by the Kenya Red Cross personnel at around 3 a.m., 5 hours after the building had collapsed. At the hospital, she tried to search for her husband. It was only tears and death all around her.
Kuna wenye waliaga wakiwa tu hapo Kenyatta nikiona tu.
Wangapi?
Wawili, na wengine walikuwa wamevunjika kabisa.
A day later, her relatives came to the hospital to pick her up. Her legs heavily bandaged, she began the search for her husband. She was barefoot and still covered in the dust and cement from the rubble. She didn't know it then, but her husband of 10 years, Moses Hayumba, had died. They found his body at the city mortuary, along with other bodies of adults and children.
Kuangalia marehemu, aliumia kichwa hii ilikatika hivi akableed. Alafu na hapa tena aliumia hizi mbafu na mguu ziliwachana kwa joints. Yani ni kama alijaribu kuruka na akagonga tuseme kwa mawe hivi ndio akaumia hapo.
Moses Hayumba is number 6 on the list of the deceased from the Huruma tragedy. There were 52 people who died that day. Kavere would later learn that his body had been the first to be found, her child had been taken up by local nuns, and tracing him was not a problem. The tragedy, however, brought a rift between her and her in-laws, who even denied her any part of the compensation that the victims received from the government.
Wadui ilianzia ama chuki ilianzia, tulikuwa wote. How comes mmoja akaaga, mimi na mtoto nikabaki. Sasa hapo ndo akasema mimi ndio nimeua.
Kavere and her husband had occupied their one-roomed flat in the 6-story building for 2 years. There had never been any sign that it would come tumbling down with such tragic consequences. Not even its eerie closeness to the river, contrary to the regulations of the National Environment Management Authority, held them back. The rent was 4,000 shillings a month, and the room served them well. The first building to collapse in recent times in Kenya and which led to many deaths was the Sunbeam supermarket in May 1996. 16 people died when the roof of the supermarket collapsed and fell on them. A task force was appointed by then-President to find out what had led to the tragedy and see if there were any changes in the laws of the country and the bylaws of the city to avoid future incidents. Typical of Kenyan teams formed to find out what has gone wrong and how it can be fixed, the task force even travelled to Malaysia, Hong Kong and Singapore in search of best practices. Yet what had led to the collapse of the Sunbeam roof was a simple lack of maintenance. The Nairobi City Council was also faulted for not conducting proper inspections on buildings, and the supermarket owners were accused of changing use of the building without having gone through proper procedures. These are almost the same challenges that the country faces today. Nothing much has changed since 1996, and still the construction of substandard structures goes on. There are several key players in the construction industry in Kenya, all governed under different regulations. First, there is the developer, the person who owns the building. Then there are the architects, governed by the Architectural Association of Kenya. Normally, the architect develops the concept for the client to show how the space will be utilized and also gives layouts on the final outlook. Then there are the engineers under the Engineers Board of Kenya. They pick up from the architects and design how the building should be placed on the ground with all the services. Engineers mainly involved in the construction sector include structural engineers who are in charge of the overall stability of the building and geotechnical engineers who deal with foundation investigations and design. Then there is the National Environment Management Authority (NEMA), which ensures that the building and the construction processes do not harm the surroundings. There is the local authority, the county government, and their job is to approve the construction, the drawings that have been made, and ensure that the building is being constructed at the right place and in the right manner. There is also the contractor who realizes the vision of the architects and engineers. Contractors are under the National Construction Authority. NCA, however, is only in charge of buildings under construction. Then there is the National Buildings Inspectorate, which is in charge of buildings which are now under occupation. Several stakeholders have argued that the problems in the construction sector in Kenya is because of the number of multiple players involved.
A construction failure will happen if any of these 5 agencies does not do its work. If any of these 5 players doesn't do its work. Now, these 5 players are all regulated by different laws. The NCA is just one of the laws. We don't regulate the conduct of architects and engineers. We don't approve drawings. That is a preview of the Physical Planning Act, domiciled with the counties. We don't give environmental licenses, it's NEMA. We don't control clients or developers. And there's no law that forces clients to use any of these professionals. So, of course, you can trace corruption in any of this. It's a chain. And they say the strength of a chain is as strong as its weakest link. So, I cannot talk for others. But we know that that could be a factor, especially in the approval process. And what we are saying, best practice, let the approvals be done under one umbrella. Regardless of the many laws, we are still one country. This can be done under one umbrella, in one station, in one desk. So that clients don't have to go to multiple agencies to seek approval. And this is what we've been advocating for. But then the structural failure is that we must amend some of the laws.
The National Construction Authority, NCA, boasts that there are far more model construction sites like this one than those that have collapsed. If you ask the engineers and architects why buildings are collapsing, they will tell you that unlike the situation in such high-end construction projects, other unscrupulous developers are not using professionals, or it is because some of the regulators in the chain don't have the capacity to enforce some of the regulations they are mandated to.
Look at the columns, yeah?
NCA, for instance, has a bone to pick with the police and local authorities. On the 11th of October 2017, a 4-story building under construction in Kisii town collapsed and killed 8 people. According to NCA, all that could have been avoided had its instructions been heeded or if it had the authority to enforce the law.
The approved structure was meant to have 3 floors. But I think by the time it collapsed, it was on 5th floor. And the sad thing about that particular case is that as an agency, we had gone there a week before the collapse and even told the police to stop it and written in the occurrence book that we feel this is going to collapse. But then the police didn't do anything about it. And there are many others which we've said time and again that we feel, based on our knowledge and our experience, this is a dangerous construction. Don't forget, construction is a science. We do mathematical calculations to determine the number of floors. So if something has been designed for 3 floors, it will never hold 5 floors. And if it does, it will be for a very short time.
That, the authority says, is the most commonly flouted regulation of buildings exceeding the declared floors. Others do not have proper emergency exits with only one tiny entrance available, yet housing hundreds of people. Any building with more than 5 floors should have a lift, but in Nairobi's informal settlements, none has. Neither do many have any natural light to speak of. The regulators also blame developers for poor concrete mixtures and weak support frames that buckle under the weight of the buildings. The county governments are the ones that are supposed to ensure that developers build only what has been approved, but that has been a challenge because many county governments are simply overwhelmed. In Nairobi County, every month there are nearly 400 constructions approved and only a handful of inspectors.
If we are talking about the completion period of 2 years, then we are talking about 8,000 approved plans, which may need the supervision if we are to be on a conservative side. And that will be against a capacity of about 15 officers, qualified officers. Now you can work out that average, and I've been telling myself, even if one officer was to inspect 200 sites per each given time, then you can see the demand for that officer to be efficient and effective, assuming that all other enabling instruments are there. But we cannot assume that because we know we have been having resource constraints in the institution.
With a small budget for staff, adding more people on its payroll is a tall order for the county governments as they try to reduce the amount of money they are spending on recurrent expenditure, and the process of outsourcing such a job to private experts has not been finalized.
Compliance, is more or less like a coercive process to a large extent. And very few people, even when you talk to them, and I'll come to this aspect, would like to be involved from the private sector perspective. However, there is the aspect of compliance which deals with the supervision, which may not be coercive, so to speak.
Inspection is also risky for county officials who sometimes do not have enough security when they're doing their work.
I've sent some officers to a construction site in Westlands, and they're telling boss, there are 4,000, there are 400 workers on site. What do I do? And those fellas will not allow you to just stop construction, kienyeji. They will not allow it. I don't know whether you visited Huruma after the collapse. I visited that site and I looked at the environment. I told myself, which officer would you send to come and arrest people if they are constructing about 10 in this environment and someone becomes violent?
Most of the inspections that have taken place are not routine checks on the buildings. Rather, they are tests that are done once complaints have been filed, and there are already telltale signs that the building may no longer be habitable. However, it is during inspections that corruption plays out, as officials are paid to look the other way and allow illegal works to go on.
I don't want to deny there could be other instances where our officers, and when we're talking about the officers, I'm not limiting myself to the technical officers, because there are so many departments of the county who are out there who could as well collude with those people to erase those marks. But what we have done to curb this practice, particularly in the agency committee, is we have sourced the GIS maps so that when we mark a building, is highlighted in the GIS map, so that even if you erase that mark, at least we know a mark was placed on this building and a notice was given, and we can always go back to that building to follow up with whatever action was contemplated.
After the Huruma tragedy, the government embarked on an inspection project to demolish all buildings that were substandard. Some came down on their own and were captured crashing down by neighbors. Luckily, there was no one inside when this one collapsed. The government-sponsored demolitions started but could not proceed, partly due to court injunctions from the owners. Some wondered why they had been allowed to build for so long in the first place, only for their investments to be later condemned. But the stop was also because demolitions are very expensive and dangerous, and unscrupulous developers know this.
If you are very vigilant, and because we work 5 days per week, the technical team, people build over the weekend and during public holidays. And what they know is our capacity, even if we are to demolish, you can only demolish the first or the second level. The moment a building goes to that level, the demand for demolition changes. And we kept on telling this team when it came into existence the same. Until we went to the ground, even with the NYS machine. And they realized even the capacity of those machines could not deal with those structures you are talking about. So we came into another way of employing the cashiers, first of all, to do it by hand and, nyundo. And then you realize it will take about 4 to 5 days to bring that structure to a level where you can use the machine. Now, those are people you have to pay, and at the same time, you need enough police presence on the ground to ensure that you are not attacked.
The costs and the court injunctions only add to the burden. In many cases, the tenants themselves don't want to move out of unsafe buildings because, like Kavere, they have nowhere else to go and no money to afford new homes. The county also often gives the developers the benefit of doubt before demolishing a structure.
we agreed we need to be scientific in approaching the issue of construction and the issue of collapsing on buildings, where we go and audit the building structure scientifically and determine what needs to be done, and then we do it as a team. Because again, we don't want to be seen as a demolition squad whose main thrust is to destroy, material wealth of our residents, because we know there are challenges and the reasons why they do what they are doing.
Since the roof of the Sunbeam supermarket collapsed in 1996, more than 170 people have died in collapsed buildings. It has been a steady climb. The next biggest tragedy after that was in 2006, the Kihonge building, which collapsed in February. 14 people died. In 2009, a building under construction in Kiambu town collapsed. 9 people died. And then the numbers started rising from Vihiga County, Kisii County, Machakos County, Kajiado County, Kiambu County and Nairobi County. The death toll continues to rise. The Huruma tragedy remains the worst. Of the 52 who died, 4 were children, 13 were classified as juveniles and 34 adults. There have also been buildings that have collapsed but with no one in them. And then there are also perimeter walls that have collapsed after heavy rains, and the death toll from that is 15. Despite the numbers, there has been no conviction in the courts, not of a developer, an architect, an engineer or of an approving agent like the county or the council. Data from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution shows that even with the hundreds of deaths, there are only 6 cases pending in court involving 17 people. There is 1 NEMA employee, 2 engineers, 1 architect, 6 developers, 3 contractors, 3 county employees and 1 district officer. The oldest of these cases has been in court for 4 years, having been filed in 2013. It involves the collapse of a building in 2011 in Embakasi Pipeline. 4 people died in that tragedy and 2 people have been charged with the 4 counts of manslaughter. They include the owner of the building and the project supervisor. The DPP says that 4 witnesses have testified so far. Perhaps things could have been different had justice been swift. Since 2011, when that tragedy occurred, at least 12 more buildings have collapsed and more than 100 more have died. Just this year, another building collapsed in the same area of Embakasi, killing 2 people. Players in the sector have argued that it may be wise to change the law so that enforcement and prosecution is easier. At the moment, the most officials can do is put marks on buildings and notify the police.
Once we have a law that coordinates all the others, and that can be done in one day. It can even be through an executive order. We don't need even to go to parliament on that, where we have one agency that can punish anyone in the chain. And once we have penal consequences in the law, where we say if you flout in construction rules, then the consequence is so many years in jail. That day it will stop, because even those who flout the rules actually know the rules, but they know that there's a loophole.
And when it comes to charges, they either face manslaughter or, like in the case of Kavenge, negligence, charges that may be harder to prove in court.
I don't want to go into the legal issues of negligence, because when you are saying someone is negligent, you must prove that actually it was brought to the attention that this particular building is going on and he failed to take action, or he took action when you look at it, he would have done more. And those are issues we can debate for the whole day.
With the confusion in the law and the impunity where it can be enforced, the collapses, deaths and injuries are likely to continue. A growing population and increasing demand means that there is a need for more houses. However, the supply is skewed towards wealthier Kenyans, locking out the poor from quality houses. No wonder most of the buildings that have collapsed or have been condemned are mainly found in poor neighborhoods.
Sasa hiyo ulitoa wapi?
Nilipewa
Wapi?
huko tu Red Cross, huko mahali tulikuwa.
Kavere's sufferings have made her care less about some of these issues. In her poverty and helplessness, fault and justice are almost meaningless words for her now, with her husband gone and her family separated. Her worldly possessions now can all fit into this bag. This picture of her husband is among the very few things that were salvaged from the scene of the tragedy. She guards it with her life.
Makosa huo ni ya nani?
So hatuwezi jua mahali makosa. Juu unaweza sema ni huyu, ni huwezi jua ni nani. Wengi wao walisema ni sacrifice ametoa watu. Wengine nao wakasema mjengo zake nyingi amezijenga kwa haraka. Hasa hakuwa anazipea muda zinakauka ama simita wako anaweka ya kutosha. Na tena hiyo tunaweza chukulia makosa, yani ilikuwa karibu na mto. Na hiyo wakati mvua ilikuwa imenyesha nyingi sana.
6 people, including her former landlord, have been taken to court, charged with 52 counts of manslaughter, but she doesn't seem to care.
Haujaienda kotini hata
Sijaienda kotini.
hata na hujaijua kama alishtakiwa ama nini?
Sijaijua kwa sababu sasa nilisema nitafuatilia vitu kama hizo, na huku mimi ndio nahangaika na watoto, acha nitafutie watoto. Sasa sijaienda. Huwa uchungu bado ingali ndani.
The soles of her feet still hurt, her right hip is still sore, and she walks in an uncomfortable gait because of the injuries she suffered. But she would have been willing to bear even more discomfort if only to have her husband back.
Sasa huwa nasikia uchungu because on my life kwa saa hizi kama sina jambo, yani sina chochote, watoto wamefukuzwa shule ama sina nini, naanza kuwaza nasema sasa yani gorofa iliweza aje kuchukua mmango, hata afadhali angekuwa kiwete ni muonage. Lakini sasa siwezi muona, alienda kabisa. Sasa huwa nawaza nasema maisha nitaweza na watoto. Sasa sitakangi kwenda Huruma ama niende kwa gorofa yote.
For Kavere, the onus is more on developers to ensure that they put up their structures and not cut corners.
Yani kama mtu amejitolea kujenga mjengo, aijenga yani vizuri, si ile haraka alafu baadaye watu waathirike. Atake time yake ya kujenga vizuri. Juu sasa wanajenga tu ile haraka yani ndio wapate pesa kwa haraka, na baadaye ni watu wanaumia.
Her 3 children now live with her mother in their rural home in Kapsabet, Nandi County. She cannot afford to have them here, and she no longer has the luxury of being a housewife since her husband, the sole breadwinner, died. Every day she leaves her one-roomed house and goes to work as a house help in South Sea. Her children back in the village have to eat. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.